Welcome to our Meet the Experts panel for TV production designers. I'm here with Sara K White from the Flight Attendant, Mark Ricker from Halston, Jamie Walker McCall from Pose, and Tom Hammock from Them. Now, your programs run the gamut of settings, styles, and decades. Do you have any kind of, no matter what you're working on, kind of go-to resources for research and inspiration, no matter what you're working on, or is it always very different from project to project? Let's start with Mark.
I tend to always go to the picture collection at the New York Public Library. It's just sort of a golden moment here in the city where before you could research everything digitally, you would go there, and I still go there because they have a wealth of images that you'll just trip upon, like maybe the one thing that hasn't found it to the web. And I just tend to always start there. Although, unfortunately, it's closed at the moment, and I can't go there, and I feel shackled.
How about you, Sara?
I think that every project for me is a chance to explore different resources. And I try to take a different angle with each project and be driven mostly by the characters and their journey and find a different way of getting to that place of design through those characters. So usually it's a different source, and I'm often working in different regions and different areas. So I was really lucky to be able to use that same resource as Mark on the Flight Attendant and do some research on international design styles before we started our project. But depending on the city I'm in and the location that I'm focusing on, that'll really guide the project for me.
And Jamie?
You know what? I do deep dives into the digital world. I just get lost, go down all the rabbit holes. Especially for Pose, one of my go-tos was, abandoned Russian apartments and, kind of that world. So I am, sometimes it depends on the show, like Sara said as well, like sometimes a lot of books, but mostly I'm web hole.
And Tom?
Obviously it depends a bit on the show, but I like buying period magazines on eBay, and then you're sort of immersing yourself in the advertisements and a bit of the color palette and kind of it all mashed up together.
And one of the interesting things about, any, production design project, I'm guessing, you've got variety of budgets and logistical constraints. What are some creative ways that you found to kind of work within whatever limitations you might happen to have, whether it's locations or amount of money that you can spend? How about you, Sara?
I think my roots with design were coming up through the independent film community. So resourcefulness was always required, no matter how ambitious the project was visually. We usually worked with too little money and not enough, but very dedicated people. And so it was always about finding the ways to work with the human resource that you have and guide and it's just invite in the people that you're collaborating with to do their best work. And I find that that's something that I didn't realize coming into this career, that it would be a really rewarding experience to be leading such an amazing group of artists. I felt like it was going to be a more solitary experience, but it's not, obviously. It's so deeply collaborative and creative in that way. And so that's something that I find a lot of value in, and I think that it brings a lot of value to every project that you work on.
Tom?
I find that, a lot of money can, if resources are tight, a lot of money can evaporate in the construction process with changes and, mistakes or shifting things around, and if money's tight, I try to be really, really careful with the drafting process, just making sure everybody's on board and we're only doing things the one time.
And how about you, Jamie?
We are constantly changing all the time in episodic television. And I think my biggest thing that I rely on is my team, my construction coordinator and my scenic. Usually I go to them and tell them, this is what I want for this, but we have, time constraints or money restrictions. And we work collaboratively to get the best outcome for what I see for the show. And I'm working with a lot of people who've done this a long time and have also worked in other fields. So it's always nice to bring in other people because they have a lot more experience than just one person.
And Mark?
Well, I think similar to what everybody else touched on here, I think just being in constant communication with your director and your DP about what the expectations are, what we want to see, how do we get the most bang for our buck. I mean, on Halston, I kept trying to design vistas into the world so that there was always an opportunity to see a vast world, even if we weren't building it. And I touched on this a little bit earlier. I mean, it was just sort of like, in terms of saving $1, discovering those moments where we could recycle set dressing through. It's just like turning it upside down or recovering it, or just literally using the same pieces throughout the show, because that's what Halston did. So anytime we could figure out a way to do that, we would jump on it.
I'm also wondering what kind of inspires you to kind of get into production design in the first place, and to contribute to film and television in this specific creative way. How about start with Jamie?
What inspired me to move out from New York and Boston to LA was I saw Lord of the Rings, and that I was like, that's exactly what I went to school for advertising, art direction, and minored in graphic design. I was like, I want to do that. And so I moved to LA and, worked my way up, and here I am.
Tom, how about you?
I just sort of had always liked movies, but stumbled into it. I'd been in science. I oddly had grown up, my father's studies poisons, and so I'd grown up milking venomous animals for anti-venom. And I stumbled into this via Spider-Man and helping them out with the laboratory. And they kind of talked me into leaving architecture and ending up here.
Well, I will say that origin story is actually better than Spider-Man, so that's...
Yeah.
I'm going to steal that origin story.
Mark, follow that up.
I can't. I just was. I mean, I was a typical kid who loved movies when then, but couldn't. It just was this on another planet. So I just started in theater, which is what you could do, and eventually just started designing the sets because I had always sort of had a marker in my hand, and one thing led to the next. And the first movie I ever worked on was Bull Durham, which was back in the dark ages, but that's when I literally discovered that there was an art department responsible. So I was lucky to figure it out early on and just pursued that. It was the only department. So that's where I started. Not with venomous snakes.
Sara, how about you?
Yeah, no venomous snakes either here. I went to school for interior design and came to New York with that. And I minored in creative writing because I really enjoyed storytelling and I really enjoyed telling stories in space. And I thought that having a professional career as an interior designer would give me that opportunity, but I felt like the imaginative environment that I had in school, where I was coming up with clients and I was coming up with the stories about their day and like able to bring that into the work I was doing then, it didn't really have the same resonance on a practical day-to-day working experience. And I just happened to fall in with a group of friends who had just graduated from the NYU film program and needed an art department. And it was an incredible experience to be invited into that creative journey of developing these stories with these creators. And I realized very quickly that that was the kind of design that I'd always hoped to do, was to be a part of that storytelling and give to an audience, give a new and deeper understanding of characters to an audience with the gift of the art department. And so that was something that immediately when I discovered that, I was on a really, really tiny music video for a sea-themed love shanty that required a mermaid lair built in miniature. And I was just like blown away that was something that even could happen in design. So immediately I was like, yes, I will design all the mermaid lairs, please. So still waiting for the second one, but it'll come.
And Jamie mentioned being inspired by The Lord of the Rings. I was wondering if the rest of you had kind of this seminal, inspirational film or TV show or piece of work that has really inspired you, either before your career started or over the course of your career. How about Tom?
Oh man, my grandmother loved Robert Mitchum, and she showed me Night of the Hunter when I was way, way too young. So I think that would be the film for me, because it is such a mix of theatrical German expressionism and reality kind of mashed up together that I really recognize somebody must be behind that, you know?
And how about you, Mark?
There's a few, but the first one that jumped to my mind was the re-release, which had been held back for so long, of Rear Window, which I saw when I was in high school in a theater, and it just, I had been a fan of Hitchcock films before that, but there was something about that film that just, took me to the entire world that was created, and I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew it was somewhere other than reality, but there was a reality going on that was just pitched to a level that, I don't know, just sucked me in.
Sarah?
I think the first film where I realized that production design was happening was actually Memoirs of a Geisha. I found out, which like late on, I didn't really recognize that sets were built and all of the worlds were created until I found out that they built the entire town for that film. And when I learned that, I was really stunned. I was stunned at how intricate it was, how beautiful it was, and that there was a passage of time in that movie that they created. They made that with a sense of the authenticity of how things age, how things change, and the fact that there was the growth and depth in that town, and that it was fully created in a field that was brand new. That was so overwhelming and inspiring to me. That's right when I was discovering the art department existed, and it was really an exciting moment.
And any other examples besides Lord of the Rings, Jamie, that really drew you into kind of the world?
I mean, something more recently, something that you watch that you're like, oh man, I wish I had done that. Babylon Berlin was one of my favorite shows creatively as of late, to get me kind of, and on top of everything else everyone here has done. But yes, yeah.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining us today, taking the time to talk to us about all your work. And it's always a pleasure to talk to people who have worked on not only in the same field, but on such different projects in the same field. So it's been a pleasure to speak with you, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.